In this tutorial we'll look at the Media Browser tab. The Media Browser in Mamba is where we organize all the files related to our project. These files could include media files, metadata files that describe what we did to that media, rendered files that we've created from Mamba, and also saved layout files. As we saw in the setup tutorial, when we create a project, Mamba automatically creates a set of standard folders, most of which it'll use at some point during a project, although some are there for historical reasons to provide backwards compatibility. It's probably not a good idea to delete any of the folders. These folders represent real folders on your system, and the full path to them is shown here. The main center of activity is under the data folder, and this is how we left this folder after doing the import tutorial. So we have some clips imported already. This folder here was created by the import process when we did an import all movies. So these, as can be seen by the LNK extension, are link files to the media, and these are shown in this blue color. Link files are tiny bits of metadata that point Mamba to where the real media is, and they can be used to load media up into the nodes graph by simply double-clicking them or multiply selecting them and hitting open. We can happily create subfolders and move our media around however we want to organize it. For example, under the data folder, perhaps create a new folder called cars, and in there we'll select all the car footage, Control X to cut, select the folder, Control V. So this is how we can organize our media how we want. And the important thing to remember is that these are just little bits of metadata. I've not changed the location of the original media. It's still where it was. I'm just organizing how I view my links to that media. At the moment I'm viewing the media browser in details mode. Alternatively, I could switch to icons, which is helpful for browsing a media bin. We can also maximize the display if we're doing a lot of organizing work. .lnk is just one type of file that we'll find in the media browser. Let's have a look at some others. For example, when we save our layout, you can see we create this sort of file, a .env, stands for environment. And a .env essentially explains the layout of the nodes. So for example, if I were to add a node into here and resave, then from the media browser we can choose one of those layouts. You'll also see the orange color file with .auto. That's Mamba doing an autosave. It's set up in the configuration program. I think the default is every 5 minutes. It'll simply save this layout into a .auto. So if you've left Mamba and forgotten to save, or indeed if you had a crash, it's worth investigating what's in here because this might well be your most recent work. The media browser also holds references and records of whatever files we've rendered or created in Mamba. So for example, to take this file, we'll just create a movie file from that. We'll look at the output folder properly in another tutorial, but just for now I'm just going to make a ProRes movie of that. So that's now just creating a ProRes movie file of our graded shot. And here's the resulting clip here. If we go back to our media browser, we can see that under the render folder there's a new folder which has the same name as the clip we've just created. And inside there are two clips, a purple one and a green one. The green one, .clp, is a reference to our rendered movie media. So it's very similar to a link file in that respect. The same sort of file that links to our incoming media. The .clp links to media that we've created in Mamba. And again, just double-clicking it will bring it into our nodes ready for use. The purple one is actually a record of everything that was used to make that clip. So if I double-click this and bring it to the nodes display, we can see we get a green box, and you'll remember from the previous tutorial that this is a group. And so if I were to enter the group or ungroup it, we can see everything that was used to make that clip. And in fact, Mamba will remember everything right down to your brushstrokes in a file like this. So these little .rnd files, as they're called, render files, are extremely useful in order to unrender a file that you created in Mamba. Also to perhaps go back in and pick just certain elements. They're also a good backup. If you lost this media for some reason off a bad drive or something, then you could remake it easily from these. and because they're actually just very small bits of metadata, they're easily backed up and saved. These files are also the basis of driving the command line renderer, or to be sent to SGO's render farm. Another type of file that we'll find within the media browser is a group file, or a .grp. If I navigate back up to the group, you'll remember from one of the previous tutorials that we can save these groups of effects separately by hitting Ctrl+C to put the group into the copy-paste buffer and hit Create Group and give it a name. Then that will naturally appear as a .grp file in the output folder. Again, this is just small metadata. This doesn't include any media. For those of you that like to get down and dirty and start scripting, you might want to investigate all of these files by opening them in a text editor, and you'll find all these metadata files, whether they're .grps, .rnds, .clps, .lnks, or even the full layout files, are actually plain text. So this certainly makes it possible to build automated workflows and other interesting tricks by manipulating these files in external scripting. Other features in the media browser window: we can navigate all over our system, so we don't necessarily have to pull in assets that are just in our project. We can go and find them from other projects or other areas. We can find our way back to our main project by hitting the home icon, refresh our files, and so on. The save and save as down here are repeats of the shortcut ones up here, and new tree just allows us to clear down our desktop area for a new shot. Over here we have a preview and source editor window. So for example, I could take one of my shots and I could set an in and an out point to decide which part of a shot I want to work with. I can also type in directly into these timecode windows. So having made a pre-selection, I can then just hit the load button to bring up that trimmed shot into our nodes. And you'll notice the length of our composite when we start to build a tree is set by default to be the length of the media that you first put into the nodes area. You can always change that later by changing this number by typing or dragging, and then you can say that when you make this longer or shorter, are you changing the end of the shot or the beginning of the shot? And in fact, in setup, there's another piece of behavior here as well, which is extend or stretch. This relates to if you've already started to build a tree with some animation curves and then you change the length of the shot, whether the animation curves stay put and just simply have extensions on their start or their end, or whether those curves are effectively sped up or slowed down to fit the new duration.